Hello, this activity plan tutorial will help you and guide you as you prepare your written activity plan for your EDU 151 Creative Activities class. As you can see here, there are 14 different areas in which you will have to write something on your written activity plan. The format is fairly easy to follow, and there is a blank copy of this in your assignment link in Blackboard. As with any assignment at JCC, you want to make sure you put your name on your assignment and the date that you're doing the assignment. So that part's pretty easy. Then you go down to the activity plan name or the activity name. Whatever your name is for that activity, whether you found it in a book somewhere or on a blog, and make sure that you write the name on there. If it doesn't have a name because you've created it, then make up a name that goes along with what the activity is really all about. The next thing is probably one of the most important in this little section of basic information, and that's listing the age group for which this activity is planned. For instance, we would do something very different for an infant classroom as opposed to a 3-year-old classroom. So make sure you're listing it by the age, 1, 2, 3, or 4-year-olds, so that we know that you are planning this activity for the appropriate age group. Next is the study topic. Again, this one should be relatively easy because you've already chosen your study topic that you're going to be working on for this whole semester. So whatever that study topic is, just list it right there. Easy peasy. This next part may be relatively new for you, where you're picking the type of activity that you're going to do with the children. For instance, a discovery or a child-directed activity means that it's an activity that takes place during free play or free choice time. It's something that you set up to do with a small group of children or with even individual children, and make sure that this is one where they're exploring the materials and not something that you are actually leading them in. A teacher-directed activity is one in which you control or dictate the activity or the props that are being used, such as for circle time or an outdoor game or even an indoor game, something like that, where you would be instructing them as to what to do and kind of guiding them along the way. So those are two very different types of activities, so make sure that you're planning yours correctly. We're going to start getting into the nitty-gritty pieces of an activity plan, and the first thing should be a justification. So why did you choose this particular activity? Typically it's based on an observation that you've done of the children in the classroom, but because in this class some of you aren't in a classroom, and that's okay, but just consider the age that you've chosen and the activity that you've chosen, and why would you do this activity? Explain how it's developmentally appropriate, what the children should be able to do, what skills they might be working on, how it might pique their interest, how this activity addresses their developmental skill level and needs. All of those things should be included in your justification. The next section of your activity plan format talks about the North Carolina Foundations of Early Learning and Development, the domains and the goals. You've become familiar with these throughout the beginning of your class, so I want you to really focus in on just one that would be addressed by this activity that you're doing. Although we know that the activities can address multiple goals, as you're conducting them, it can even take it in a whole nother direction, and that's okay, but what we want you to do is just focus on one. So pick the best one that you think that activity covers, and that's the one you use. However, be cognizant as you're doing multiple activity plans for this class to use different goals for the different activity plans. Don't always focus on the same thing. Try to vary it up and get to know the NC Foundations because you're going to be using it a lot. Now that you've chosen the NC Feld goal for this activity plan, then you want to start looking at what you're going to be looking for the children to demonstrate that they can do to show that they have met that objective or that goal that you've listed. You want to be able to measure it somehow. So the way most people state their goal is the children will be able to, and then you list exactly what you mentioned above in the NC Feld goal section. By doing what? What will they show you? How will they show you that they can do that activity? What will they do? What will they say? How will they act? How will you know that they have met that goal? That's what this section is designed to say. As with any good activity plan, we want to make sure that you know the materials that you're going to need for everything in that activity. So if you list out the materials and the supplies that you need for this activity, when you go to implement the activity, you will have everything at the ready. You will know exactly what you need to gather. If you are including books or CDs or videos or any other kind of finger play or song or dramatic play, you want to make sure that you're providing the author and the title of the book or the CD or the video. You want to provide the words to the song. You can put them all in this area, or you can attach them at the very end of your activity plan and just make a note. All of this is found at the end. Although it may sound like you're trying to repeat yourself a little bit, you've listed all the materials. Now, how are you going to set up the area for those materials? For instance, if you're doing something in the dramatic play area, how are you going to set the dramatic play area up to do what it is you're planning to accomplish with this activity? Be sure to do it in detail. Be really, really detailed in this section. Number one, list the area. So if you're doing it at a table in the classroom, if you're doing it in the art area, if you're doing it in dramatic play or blocks, make sure you're listing that area. But then also how it should be set up. So if I were to come into your classroom as a substitute on a day that you were out and I picked up this activity plan, I'd be able to set it up just like you did. If you notice the picture here, they were setting up to learn about the watercolors, or the color of water. So they were giving various different opportunities for children to see those based on the book that they had already read. So again, how would that be set up? They would tell me that I would need to put the different color blue paints in bowls. I'd need to set out all of this stuff so that I would be ready to implement this activity. The next two sections will probably be the lengthiest of your written activity plan. The introduction is how you're going to entice the children to want to do the activity that you've planned for them, but also it should be some details on how you're going to connect it to the theme, in your case, or prior learning if you're actually going to implement this with a group of children. And then the higher level thinking comments or questions that you could generate some conversations to help promote that deeper understanding. You're going to do a lot more of that in the next section. However, your introduction needs to be enticing enough that the children are excited about doing whatever it is, and that they understand the instructions for what you're going to have them do. In the interactions and procedures section of your written activity plan, you're going to see that this is going to be the most lengthy, because this is how you're going to describe what it is you're doing with the children to do the activity. So explain how you'll work with them, what you'll say to them, how you'll guide them, how you're going to encourage them. All of those things are going to be really important. We have kind of what we call the rule of three. We look for you as you're writing this script, as we call it. We want you to really think about some of the things. Think about the activity area that you're in, that you're doing the activity in, but also think about some open-ended questions and statements that you can ask beyond the normal, what color is it, what shape is it, what size is it, how many do you have, those kind of things, because those are not open-ended questions. They may be questions you can use to guide them toward their goal, depending on what your goal is, but they are not open-ended. So be sure that you're using open-ended questions. In this section, we want you to pre-think. We want you to intentionally think about some of those things that you could ask in any given situation while you're doing that particular activity. So it helps you to kind of think through the activity and think through what it is, what it's going to look like in the class, and that kind of thing. We also want you to kind of guide toward the goals. So you're going to scaffold their learning toward that NC field goal that you listed above, you're going to look at that goal and you're going to say, okay, the children are kind of going off on this direction. How can I rein them back into toward the goal, or in the direction they're going, is there a way we could still reach the goal? So you're going to kind of come up with some ideas for some things that you could say to them so that you're already prepared. You've got that intentionally in the back of your head, in your toolkit, as we call it, when you get ready to do this activity with the children. And then lastly, we want you to include some encouraging statements. How will you encourage children to participate who may not show that they're interested in participating? And how will you help the children as they're engaged in the activity? How will you help them to feel confident in themselves as a learner? Not just good job or great job or this is great, but what will you do to actually engage them in the activity and encourage them as an independent learner? In the differentiating, adaptions, and accommodations for various developmental levels section of this written assignment, what you need to think about is within each age group. For instance, I talked about earlier how the 1-year-olds or the infants are very different from 3-year-olds when you're planning activities for them. So within that age group, we know that there are variations. We know that we've got very high functioning children in some areas and some who need some more supports. So what you do in this area, and you cannot leave it blank and get full credit, but in this area you need to list ideas for adapting the activity so that you can engage all the children in the classroom or in that age range. So you're looking at those who struggle with doing that activity. For instance, cutting with scissors may be one that some are struggling with. So what could you do differently for them so that they can use those same type of skills, but maybe not actually use the scissors, those particular tools? So come up with some ideas on ways that you can adapt and change an activity so that you're prepared. Again, these are just things to go in your toolbox, but make sure you're scripting it out well. And as with any other written work, you want to make sure that you provide references for the resources where you find the information to complete this written assignment. So if you've used a book or a website or a curriculum from where you work, or even a blog where you found the activity, you need to list it in the resources section. You need to provide the link to the website or the blog if it's something you found online. If it's something that you created or another teacher, you saw them do, you can give them kudos for that, or give yourself, say it's something that you created. But make sure you put something in that section to let us know. If it is something where you can share the resource, that's always helpful, and you can share those in our discussion boards as we go to for your friends and colleagues in your class. Lastly, although this isn't a part of the actual written assignment that you may be looking at and following through as I've been going through this video, but it is something that you have access to. It is also in that assignment link, the rubric for this assignment. You want to look at the proficient column, so it'd be like the second column over. That's what you want to be able to do. So you want to make sure that you're checking off all the boxes, but that you are doing everything specifically that it says. If you're not, then you might want to go back and tweak your written assignment so that you are covering that to get the full points. How would you score yourself using that rubric? And remember the concepts that we've learned about it in our class. Remember those concepts. Remember all the things that I've talked about so far in this video, and then what you're going to read on that written assignment. Make sure you're aligning all of that as you're grading yourself. Once the assignment has been submitted and I have graded it for you, go back and read my feedback. You'll be able to click into the My Grades in Blackboard and then click into the grade itself, and you should be able to access the rubric there so that you can see my feedback for the specific rubric row that you may need to work on for next time, or just so that you have that in your head, because you're going to use this activity plan or a similar activity plan throughout your time here at JCC. We recognize that these activity plans are a little more involved and a lot more detailed than you're probably ever going to have to do in your work when you go to work in a child care program. However, We want to make sure that you're equipping yourself, and we know we've got some seasoned teachers in this class, and we know we've got some people who've never been in a classroom before. So we want to make sure that we're giving you the tools that you need to be able to do everything you need to do when you get in front of a group of children, and that you're prepared with those open-ended questions, those guiding statements, all of those things that you can encourage the children to participate in learning activities that make them exciting and fun for them, but also that they're learning and they're reaching a goal.